Wassail Beautiful People. So, I'm sitting in part of where the house is across here, the mill, and the water comes in from the holding pool and then it runs underneath. And at the moment, this would be the area where the water runs out and through this sluice door. And there's no water here at the moment, partly because they haven't got the gateways open, but also there's very little water that comes here in the dry season, so through the summer, and usually the rains and the water return in about mid-September. And I'm not sure that I'll be here to see that, but I was drawn to come down here to do a reading on something I don't know anything about particularly, but I've been told spiritual cul de sacs. So the ghost in the house is not a ghost. It's actually the genius loci. It's the spirit of the place. It's the spirit, the energy, the frequency that is the kind of overseer of what goes on here. And if you respect the spirit by noticing it and thanking it, it offers you wonderful things. I also want to do a reading about this fig tree that's above. It's absolutely profuse with figs. It's totally amazing. So, spiritual cul-de-sac. I've got no idea what that's about. So, I feel like it's the spirit of place, the genius loci that is trying to communicate through all my readings. So, sorry for a delay. They've kidnapped me. I've been here, and the magic of the place is a distraction. I am being constantly distracted from everything, all of you, my work, everything, to tune in to the natural world here. And it's very enchanted. It's absolutely beautiful, but I'm finding it very difficult to just tune away from everything in the outside world and just allow that beautiful energy to flow through me. Yeah, I'm enjoying it immensely. It's such an honor. But trying to just chill down and be very relaxed can be quite problematic. So, this spirit has been blocking me reading any cards. I throw cards down and they're just distortions. They're sort of saying don't go into this kind of predictive energy need and just focus on flowing in the now. That's what I tell us all to do all the time. But doing it and maintaining the work schedule that I have laid out for myself has been quite problematic. But so, this morning I have been told that the genius loci will talk to us about spiritual cul-de-sacs. So, a little bit like black holes, it's over to a higher energy to get some answers. So, I've got the raw runes. Oh, you see now, that's a really interesting first card. Emotional bleed, leech. It's like being in your inner womb and yet all your energy is bleeding out. So a spiritual cul-de-sac is an emotional bleed. This feels like a spiritual cul-de-sac in many ways because this is an area that water would flow through, and yet I'm sitting here right now and there is just a dryness, and there is such intense heat here. It's in the 30s Celsius and it is incredibly warm, and you have to tune in to the frequency of the warmth. It's a little bit like your brain, your body, everything behaves differently, thinks differently, and you have to tell yourself you're not hot, but you're just at the exact temperature of the place. And that is quite complicated, and so I'm being told that that's a little bit like emotional bleeds down a cul-de-sac. So you flow down a cul-de-sac. How long do you flow down a spiritual pathway that you've set off on before you realize that actually the sluice door is shut and you need to turn round and walk back? And I don't know what that journey of walking backwards involves, but there's something about going down intended pathways that lead nowhere. So we have static 12th. And this is a really important frequency. I mean, we look at it as 12 as in an energy that's a blockage, and yet it's a divine detour, they're saying. It's a structure until you recognize that actually your current beliefs are closing you in. You will continue down certain spiritual paths as intended until you reach a point where you see the purpose of the deceit or the deception. That's really interesting. So we then have Onadella, which is leaf. Ah, you see, that's interesting too. So they're saying one leaf doesn't make a tree. And so the more fixed you are in your spiritual knowledge, spiritual belief, your spiritual dogma, the more or the less opportunities for other leaves to open. So you have to experience cul-de-sacs, you have to experience being guided by spirit to come down, to flow to something that promises this energy of mirroring. It's like there's something about synchronicities as well. It's like there being a profound amount of I'm being upgraded a little bit here, and I am going to be all over the place. I'm being taught how to read energies differently. So I'm being immediately pulled to the energetic differences between and similarities between the bleed and the leaf. So they're showing me how stepping from within your womb, stepping from within your comfort zone. They're showing me stepping outside of that, changing something about yourself to draw a new energetic flow. You can't continue. You will reach on many of your spiritual endeavors an impasse, and it will make you cross. It will frustrate you because somehow this is all the mirrored patterns. All the things that you believed were exactly right. This is also a rune of time, remember. And it feels like at the moment we're all being made aware, or that's what the next part of our journey forwards is, to become aware of which spiritual beliefs that you hold are in fact leading you down cul-de-sacs, and which ones are allowing the sluice gates to open and and they're saying to me water that's moving with a new energy to flow through. It's like there's another card, Erdmasian, where this is a closed symbol of a D with the dot inside, and it's to almost have your sacral, your notion, your seed, your belly about to give birth. When you understand that you've been guided down a divine detour or an emotional cul-de-sac, you can finally release the seeds and step away, because you've planted part of your energy frequency at the cul-de-sac, and this allows new growth. Even though it feels like it was a wrong turn, it's exactly the turn you needed to go down and to cover the ground of, to plant new seeds. That's quite interesting. So I have Odin and the 9 realms. It's very hot in this emotional cul-de-sac. What would you like to add, please, Genius Loci, to explain what these emotional cul-de-sacs are to people? We need to understand it a bit more. It's Isa. What are you hanging on to? What are your icy, frozen core beliefs that you refuse to melt? They're so old that the ice in them has become so rigid that you can't even chip away at it. Somehow you've got to bring a new energy of fire, of passion from within, where fire meets ice, to begin to warm your rigidities, the things you hold dear, and to allow them to melt. Because when it melts, as the heat builds, it doesn't just become liquid at first and flow with new emotions. And they're saying that this emotional bleed is about knowing when to close the sluice door and turn round. I could open that door and keep walking, they're saying, further down the cul-de-sac, or I can realise that this is not an energy that's actually serving my future, even though it's had all the most beautiful synchronicities. It was just part of a journey. So then the water, as it gets more and more hot, becomes steam, and that's what frees you. That's what creates new energy. So what else would you like to say? It's Freya. So it's love. I mean, it's kind of saying that this door is Freya. She comes with all this love for us, and somehow we get there and we feel disappointed, but actually we should almost, the very manifesting of the blockage is something that we need to appreciate, and you know, and just kind of just go forwards and just kiss the door and just say thank you for showing me how some avenues of spirituality are just not serving me and others do. And then leave your seeds, leave your devotion and thanks to that blockage, so that you can step forwards into something much more beneficial and new. What else? Oh, look, it's the power of the Yggdrasil tree. It's about how far do you want to spread your roots? Because how far you spread your roots, how far you look into the shadow aspects of yourself, those pathways that you go down that serve no purpose other than to awaken you to something new, is how far you can reach your branches and create your visible existence in the real world. So what else would you like to say about these emotional cul de sacs? Right, they are a spiritual healing. It's air. Every time, people write on here, that they've been on a spiritual journey for 12 years, 20 years, 2 years, whatever, and they say it still hasn't manifested, but maybe it's because you keep walking down all these corridors and you don't ever realize which corridors are the right ones for you to be walking down and which ones have always been blocked, but you've been walking through them regardless. It's a change point. It's something coming across you it is like an epiphany, but it's not. It's about resetting your inner compass. It's resetting your inner direction for where you want to go. And this really is about releasing yourself from fixed spiritual beliefs. Doesn't matter how long you've believed something, you have to question everything. And, I like to sort of think, I currently believe this, and then as I learn more, I will adapt how I see the world. And then we have Thor's hammer. I mean, taking a hammer to crack a nut, it's like that's the feeling that we get when we face this door, when we finally see that a journey point that we're on is in truth a cul-de-sac. It's by recognizing it as a cul-de-sac and not a continuous corridor that we learn to heal. And it is a really uncomfortable energy. It's an energy that hits you like a hammer. It's so powerful that it's bruising, and yet really it's an energy of love and personal growth. That's the whole point of it. Each cul-de-sac is offering something very different to approach a new part of life. That's too many. So, do you have any more rune messages for this cul-de-sac before I melt? That's interesting. They've given a whole series, but they said I have to read them to you. So it's given me the community rune, which is solstice at the moment. But it's also community. But it's also about something fleeting, something not fully formed, something that hasn't become its truth yet in the physical world. And even when it does, it's almost like not a flash in a pan, but sort of not tangible to hang on to. It's a passing moment, just as this blockage is just a passing moment. It's not a permanent blockage. It's not something stopping you from growing. Broom, to sweep aside. Birch tree, new beginnings. And there's some energy within this about bending and not snapping. Very much like the wonderful poem that Patrick had in his video about the bamboo. It's a bit like the U-bow, that's pulling down, that bend, but not snapping, but it giving you the energetic power to shoot off in a new direction. And we have hooded, which is Hod. This was that wonderful card that was to do with to be blinded. I mean, to walk down a spiritual cul-de-sac is to be blinded. And it's about trying to find a way to harvest your inner self. Weathercock. This often means to blow in all directions. It means to always be influenced by others, but actually the energy that's coming from this card today is to change direction, to reach the end of a spiritual cul-de-sac, to turn round and to head to the light of the new synchronicities, the new energy. Oh, the light day, Daj, is to pass through. None of what you did to get to that cul-de-sac was worthless. It was the code that was needed. It was the shadows that form the key to go back the other way, and there will be some other kind of pathway available to you that you can go through. So it is raising your frequency. So let's just go with Odin again. I've got some other decks here, but I feel like we just need to stick with these. What would you like to end with, please? Odin is in the house. So, what is a spiritual cul-de-sac? A spiritual cul-de-sac is to hang through. It's that card of knowing when you're ready for change, because card 12, the Hanged Man, is followed by card 13. So, it's very much we are led down these pathways, and they can go on for a long time, but that's down to us taking off our own vanities, our own blindnesses, because we believe we're being spiritually guided. You are being spiritually guided, but not in... You are being spiritually guided in the direction you're supposed to go in, which is towards a dead end, to have an epiphany, to make a change. But there is also an energy about it, of it being layered with frustration. It's a test. Most of what happens when you're on a spiritual pathway is a series of tests, and knowing that you've reached the epiphany is to reach that door, laugh at the door and kiss the door and thank it. Ing. This is like the inner structure. They're showing me the inner structure of something much bigger. It's like saying this is the missing piece, the new idea, the coming energy, but it hasn't found its frame on which to hang itself. Again, that energy of the hangman, Odin and the wisdom. Seeking wisdom. Oh, so they're saying seeking wisdom, and just as Odin did, imagining that each piece of wisdom that you gain is somehow a completion, when in fact it's just the current frequency that you need to reach the next understanding, which will rewrite many of your previous understandings. They're just, what they're saying is we all go through dry patches where we stick with our spiritual paths, our notions of where we're heading, but they're actually the sort of the desert heat, the dry, the barren, the no emotions, and yet all the time it feels like an emotional bleed. So sometimes we're being over emotional, they're saying. We're being over emotional when we need to be more, not logical, but more coherently cerebral. Sometimes we need to let our head rule to understand where our emotions are misguiding us. But look, they're not really misguiding you, because you have to go down spiritual cul-de-sacs. They're part of the testing ground. It's like many of the things you read online from the spiritual community that have been, you know, forming for the last 60 years. They're not the energies of the now. They're not, in fact, the truths. They were the truths then, but we're in different energies, and a lot more people are going to find that many of their spiritual truths, many of their idée fixe, their fixed ideas, are just walking them into doorways. We need to change direction. We need to be this weathercock. We need to spin the wind and let it turn. Let it be somewhere else. Stop being... Allow more leaves to grow on your personal Yggdrasil tree. You've got to nourish your Yggdrasil tree so that it grows fully. So, a last card please to end. What would you like to end with? So it's bringing up Muspelheimir, fire, the original ideas, new truths. Spiritualism is about to explode and come alive with new clarities, new truths, new ideas that are incredibly healing. But to heal, you've got to be open to the change. You've got to be open to the notion that a different kind of water, a different kind of energy, air, water, air, earth, air, fire. It's just a different frequency now that we're in the air mutation. Now that we're spending 200 years working with the energy of air, all of the energies, all of the elements that were rigid for 200 years are all breaking open, and all the pieces, all the fractals are spinning out, and they're like a snow globe, and slowly over the 200 years all of these elements will sink back down. But to begin with, they're going to be stirred up, and they're going to be thrilling, they're going to be exciting. So that's spiritual Cul de Sacs. I'm going to ask for one last rune. One last rune, please, for spiritual Cul de Sacs. Harvest. Time to harvest something new. Energetically. To kind of stop, change, redesign, regrow, have new ideas. This is seed here. This is the void, and yet we're piercing the void. It's no longer this thing that's hooked into consciousness and bleeding. You've moved the energy forward so that you're in a sense of being able to tap into the void frequency, the limitless potential that exists, and picking up new energies to ground yourself, to become a mirror to the frequencies of place. That's the word they want to say. To become a mirror of the frequencies of place, to look at the place that you live in and see its truth. And where its truth is ugly, you change the truth of the place, working with the spirits around you, and then that will bring you into a new energetic flow. And the cul-de-sacs will go, and you will find yourself back on an open road, flowing. So, that's spiritual cul-de-sacs, and we're going to do genius loci as well. I'm not going to promise when, because you know that genius loci that's here, honestly, it keeps dragging me off to do other things, but I'm enjoying them. It's such a pleasure, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who made it possible for me to be here. It's really, I've never felt so at home somewhere, but I don't want to say at home. I want to say I've never felt so matched to the genius loci of a place as I currently do to this one. And when it's time for me to leave, I'll know that my energies that have been transformed here will transform into something else for the next stage of my journeying. So that's spiritual cul-de-sacs, and I'll see you all soon, beautiful people, and thank you for everything you sent to me. Wassail.